Okay, everybody, it says that I'm live. I just want to double check. Let me see. I will start by saying hello to the people I see out there. I see Mary and Robin and several other people jumping on. So if you can hear me, please go ahead and let me know down in the chat that you can hear me. So if you can hear me, that's great. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So today is the pillow of the month. And we're going to start with an autumn themed pillow for September. And so hopefully you can get it done in time for cooler weather. And mine is going to grace my recliner all the way through Thanksgiving. And let me show you what we've got going on. Awesome. Thank you, Robin, for letting me know that you can hear me. Okay, so I've got my view down here. So you should have downloaded this image. And I don't know why that cut off, but you have a tree. And then you also have a pillow. You have some bonus content that I added this month, just in case you don't want to do something quite so fussy that has so many little pieces. You may want to do something else. So let me share my desktop. Here is the pattern. So the pattern has enough pieces that you can use jelly roll scraps for all these little leaves. And so this is going to be a 15 by 12 inch pillow. So let me show you what this looks like. So first we're going to start off with the tree. This tree is about, I would say, 9.5 inches tall. And those leaves, the little leaves will fit on a 2.5 by 2.5 inch piece of jelly roll scrap. Now, if you don't feel like making that giant tree, you can just make your pillow using some giant leaves and call it a day. So maybe you're in a hurry and you don't feel like doing anything fussy, you can do that. Or you could use your Inktense pencils. And I showed you how to do that last year with the pillow that had the pumpkins. So if you want to make just a pillow with 2 giant acorns on it instead, you can do that too. So you're the designer of your own project, and so you decide what you want to do. All right, everybody, my name's Yvonne, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to teach you how to do sketchy applique, and let me show you the materials. All right, so this tree, like I said before, this is an 11-inch piece of paper, so this is 8.5 by 11. So this tree is about 9.5 inches tall. These leaves should all be about 2.5 inches. And they should fit nicely within some jelly roll scraps that you have from any other projects. And you're going to see me use some of those. So if you have a jelly roll scrap, you can see that these leaves all fit inside of a leftover jelly roll. All right. Sorry, friends, I have to sneeze. Okay. So the first thing that you're going to do, if you're going to do it the sketchy applique way, is you're going to trace this right side up onto the back of your fabric. And I've already started that. I don't know if you can see that, but I've already started sketching. I don't know if you can see that. And I am sketching with a friction pen. So friction pen erases with heat. And so I'm just here adding these lines because this is one continuous line that I'm going to be sewing. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to come all the way around this tree, and it's one continuous line over here to the other side. And I'm going to do that with my free motion foot on my sewing machine. And when I'm done with that line, I'm going to be sewing it in cream, because what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try to get a nice deep indent. And so the reason I'm doing it in cream is because I'm going to come back after that and I'm going to use an ink pencil. So I'm going to use a Micron 10. This has got a nice little fat tip on it. And I'm going to come back through and trace that once I have stitched it in kind of a lighter color. That way, if I want to come back and do a watercolor effect with my Inktense, I can do that. And so let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, I just traced that pattern, and it starts here and it goes all the way around, and that's what we're going to do. So now that I've got it, I'm going to go ahead and heat up my iron. And then I'm going to use a little bit of glue around the tree, not underneath the tree. And so I'm going to take And I'm going to secure with 100% washable glue. I'm going to baste this to my batting. I have a piece of batting that's about, I would say, it's about a 1/2 inch bigger than what I need across the top and the bottom, and maybe a 1/2 inch over here. And this piece of fabric is 20 inches across by 13 inches high. And I'm just going to kind of secure that. And then I'm going to hit it with the iron. And what I want to do is I'm just kind of basting it away from where I'm going to be sewing. Not that I'm worried about my needle gumming. It really won't. I just want to make sure that this is tacked down so that it doesn't stretch and go everywhere. Now that I have that glue basted, I'm going to take my iron and I'm going to hit around the edges. Remember, this is Inktense, and so it erases with heat. See, if I touch these tips, boom, they're gone. And so I'm just going to hit it with the iron around the tree. And then I'm going to come back and fill those spots that I just erased so that I can show you. And so let me just take this. If you don't feel like tracing my tree, you can design your own tree and trace it however you want. But I'm going to start sewing here, and I'm going to come all the way across. So let's go over to the machine so I can show you how to do that. All right, so let me go over to the sewing machine camera. And what you see here is I have my feed dogs. I'm going to drop them down, all the way down. And then I have a darning foot attached to my machine. And so it just kind of goes up and down. And let me just make sure. I took my regular foot off, and I put a darning foot on here. And so this darning foot kind of bounces, so I can lift it and slide my fabric underneath there. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and it helps to have tweezers when you're doing this kind of stuff, or even just a stick, because the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my bobbin thread up from the bottom. So I'm going to go down, and as it brings the bobbin thread up, I'm going to stick my chopstick underneath here, and I'm going to pull both of those through. And so now the little hole that's right there has my thread through it. All right. Now, once I have that started and I have those on this side, I'm going to take both of my hands and I'm going to start sewing this upside down. And I know that seems kind of weird to have my tree upside down, but when I am free motion quilting, it's easier to move like this and then turn my piece and then come back around like this. So you never want to twist your hands in a weird way. You just want to keep them that way. And then I'm going to use that stuff that athletes use when they get injured. And I'm going to put this on my thumb on this side. And the reason I'm using this is because it enables my fingers to get grippy. So I'm going to take a little bit of this grippy tape that nurses sometimes use, and I'm going to put some on my middle finger like this to hold my piece. And then I'm going to put a little bit on the face of my thumb. And that's just to give my fingers a better grip. It's like a thimble. And just like that. It's kind of tacky, but not so much. And I use that on this hand just to help me guide my fabric. It reduces hand strain as well. So I use a little bit of grippy. I leave my index finger alone because I want to be able to feel stuff with my index finger. And so there we go. I tap that on there, and now I'm ready. So if you have never used this kind of grippy stuff that they use for athletes when they're injured, this is a great thing to pick up at the pharmacy or even the Dollar Tree. All right. So the thread that I have underneath is cream, and the thread that I have on top is cream. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my stitch length. And I'm going to be, there's no stitch regulator on this machine. It only straight stitches. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do an anchoring stitch. And so I'm going to come down. And then I'm going to come back up. And with it, I'm going to pull like this away from me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm pulling that lower bobbin thread up. And like I said, it helps to use like a little chopstick, and I'm going to bring it up through the thread because I want it to come up on this side. So now that I have it, both pieces of thread on this side, let me grab it one more time. I want both pieces of thread on the top side. Here we go. And once I do, there we go. Pull, pull, pull. That can be a little tricky, but I'm pulling both pieces of thread to the top. So I want the bobbin thread and the top thread up here on top. And they're coming out where this started, okay? Maybe it'll help here. If you can't see what I'm doing, let me turn this off. So I have my bobbin thread is up on top now and my top thread. And I'm gonna use that to hold both of those. So I'm gonna lower make sure you lower your presser foot. And then this should fit snugly against the fabric, but not so much, and it lifts up and down. Okay. So now I'm gonna start, I'm using ivory thread. And I'm going to go back to where where that thread is coming up, just one stitch over. And I'm gonna hold these two pieces like this in my hand. And I curl it around my finger so they don't go back into the hole. And I'm gonna start stitching in place. And so, let's see. Oh, goodness. Hang on, friends. The cord fell down on my machine and I gotta re-plug it in. Ah, there it goes. It helps when your machine is on. All right, so let's go back. I need to grab these two, and then I'm going to come back and forth, just like one stitch apart. Now I'm going to loosen my stitch length. It was at 1.9, and I'm going to do it at a 2.0. And now I'm going to slowly put my hands like in a diamond shape and bring that towards me like this. And the needle that I have in here is an embroidery needle. And I always stop with the needle down and I pivot the piece so that I'm traveling either forward or backward, not side to side. If you travel side to side, you will get skip stitches and your stitch length will get really wonky. So I'm going to go forward like this, trying to keep a steady pace. And then I use my hands on either side of the fabric to keep my fabric nice and taut so that I don't get any ripples in it. And so I'm trying to come, and then I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to come towards me. Now, if you want to go side to side, and you're very familiar with how to do free motion quilting, you can. But I tend to prefer to just kind of go forward and backward. If you're new to free motion quilting, this is one of the easiest things to do because it's very forgiving. Because I am quilting in a color very similar to my background. Because what I'm doing is I'm giving it texture, right? I'm giving it the shape of the tree without necessarily the outline of the tree. Now I'm coming back this way. And like I said, I turned it all the way around so I can come back the other way. And I'm going to come down here. And I'm going to pivot my hands. And then I'm going to go back the other way. Now, when you're sewing like this, your shoulders will start to ache if you don't have good body posture. It will happen. So you kind of have to have a pretty good body posture so that your neck and back don't end up killing you after you do a little bit of this type of sewing. All right, so now I'm going forward again. And then I'm just going to rotate this around. Again, smoothing my design. And coming this way. And then you just stop and pivot each time. The goal of this is just steady, even stitches. And it takes practice. But it doesn't take long once you get the rhythm of it. And I'm already halfway done with the tree, so it doesn't take long at all. The scariest thing is getting started when it comes to things like this in the quilting world. But once you do it a few times, you're like, oh, that's not too bad. If you're going into a gentle curve, you can turn it like I'm doing with my hands like this. And it reduces the number of times you have to shift your fabric, so you can just turn like you're driving a car. If that branch right there is not quite long enough, you can always just kind of make it your own. I don't think that branch is long enough, so I'm going to go up just a hair. And then I'm coming this way. All right, I'm going to stop there. And make sure that your presser foot is down. That's the number one thing that I see people doing, is their presser foot is not down. This one needs to be tighter. Make sure that your stuff is tight. Mine is a little bit loose. I'm just tightening that down. And that'll keep your presser foot where it needs to be, your darning foot. Okay. Coming back the other way. And I'm just trying to move my hands a tiny bit, slow and steady. Now I have a sewing machine that has a stitch regulator, and I could have pulled it out, but I do like to practice good old-fashioned free motion with my straight stitch machine, just because I think it's a good skill to have. And if my fancy machine ever dies on me, I'm not going to be in a rush to run out and go get another one. All right. And so look at this. Here we go. I'm almost at the end. I'm just going back and forth and angling it when it goes away from where it needs to go. And I'm just using my hands to drive. Try to loosen up your shoulders so that you don't end up with a lot of shoulder pain. All right, so now that I got there to a good stopping point, I'm going to readjust. And all I have left is one little branch and to come back down the tree so you can see what I've done. All right. Now, if you've noticed, I've got my batting underneath here. And one of the things that will do, that will save me having to quilt this later on. So I'm actually going to applique and quilt at the same time, saving myself a big step. All right. I'm going to stop because I'm traveling sideways and I don't want my stitches to skip. I'm going to take and stretch that just a hair to make sure that it's flat, and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to finish the rest. All right, now I'm going to go off the edge and then I'm done. And I'm just going to pull that over, and that's it. And you can just trim it off. All right, so let me show you what I did. So let me bring it over to the camera. And there you have it. So now I have my tree. I don't know if you can see that. I'll pull this down so you can. And on the back, you can see that the tree has an outline. See the outline of the tree? Can you guys see that? My tree's been completely outlined. And now I'm ready. See how it has a wave to it? This is what happens when you quilt, is the flatter that you want the piece, see how it starts to kind of curve on you? The flatter you want the piece, the more you want to quilt around it. So now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and give it a press and erase all of those friction lines, because I don't need them anymore. So all the lines have disappeared. My stitching is still there, and my stitching is done back here. You can see my tree is already finished. All right, so now that I have this, I can go ahead and start working with my black marker along that edge. I can see it. One of the ways that I work with this is by using a light. I can hold my light to the side. Can you guys see that? And if you hold your light to the side like this, you can see the outline. Can you guys see the outline of that tree? So I set my light over to the side, a nice bright light, and then I use that so that I can come in here and do a little bit of tracing. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to trace right along the edge of that stitch line, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a shadow of a tree. So I'm going to come back in, and now that I've stitched, this is going to be perfect on that stitch line. So instead of drawing a line and then stitching on the line and then getting kind of messy, I'm kind of doing this process in reverse. I'm stitching first, and then I'm coming back in and I'm using, this is a permanent archival pen. So I'm coming in, and guess what? My stitching is going to fall exactly on the line. And that's what I want it to do. And I use my light box off to the side. Now somebody might say, well, why didn't I use this one in the first place instead of drawing it with friction? I do that because I don't want my mistakes to be like super obvious. So I do it like this because then I know that my line is going to be right on the stitching and it'll look a lot more clean and neat and less messy. All right, it's almost done now. Now this is archival ink. It's what people use to make their quilt labels, to write their quilt labels. It lasts through washings and washings and washings. It's permanent ink. And then this one is almost done. I have one more lower branch here to do. And there is my completed tree. Can you guys see that now? All right. So if you want to leave these on, you can, but I can reuse these a couple of times. So I have a little thing that I stick them on. I have like a little ruler, and I just shove them on there. And I can reuse these like maybe 3 or 4 times until they lose their tackiness. But any time that I'm doing free motion quilting, I always put these on my finger. But you can just save them, use them a couple of times. That way you don't waste a lot of stuff. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and set that. So I'm going to heat up my iron. You turn off this crazy light off over here. And you should be able to see the outline of my tree. Can you guys see that? So now my tree has already been quilted. And I can start the next phase. So now I'm going to go ahead and press it one more time. It'll shrink those stitches and it'll flatten my design. The more flatness I want, then I'm going to have to do more quilting. All right. So now I've got my tree and I'm ready to start the process of making my leaves. So my leaves, I'm just going to do traditional, fusible applique, and I can draw any leaf I want. These are little oak leaves. These are little maple leaves. This is like a little ginkgo leaf. These are just generic looking leaves. And so you decide what kind of leaves you want your tree to have. Maybe your tree has all of them, who knows? But you can just draw leaves, or you can free motion cut those leaves. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use a couple of different batiks for mine. This is the back of the pillow. It's a flannel. and it's already been washed. You can see how ravelly it is because flannel unravels like crazy. So this one's already been washed, and this is going to be the back of my pillow. I want my pillow to be kind of squishy and warm and comfy. So flannel shrinks like crazy, so I went ahead and washed it in hot water a couple of times so that this will be the back of my pillow. All right, for my leaves themselves, I dug into the catacombs of my sewing room, and I found this print right here. So it has a bunch of different colors of kind of gold and green. I don't know if you can see that. Can you guys see that? Kind of dark. I don't know, the lighting on this. Here, let me adjust the exposure. Here we go. Can you guys see that better? There we go. So this has a lot of greens. This has like a lot of oranges, this particular piece. I had some squares. I also had this kind of hand-dyed piece right here that has a lot of greens and maroons and browns. So I'm probably going to use that to cut leaves out. And then I also have some weird batiks like this. Like this has cherries, but I could use this for smaller leaves. I have little bits left over like this, chunks of this. It doesn't even matter. A bit that looks like this, and even some pumpkin fabric. Like it doesn't even matter. I'm going to use just about anything and everything that I had in my sewing room, so I'm not even going to be too concerned with it. All right, so because I'm not too worried about the shape of my leaves, I'm going to pick just one shape, and I'm going to get my paper scissors, which are over here, and I'm going to cut some smaller chunks. So I'm just going to take my fusible web, and this is Pellon 805, and I'm just going to cut a bunch of pieces that are about 2.5 by 2.5. If you want to get really picky, you can draw this. By the way, this is the needle that I had inside my machine. I had a Microtex Chrome 8012, but you can take one of these pieces, and if you see how this is the same size or similar, and just kind of eyeball this, and then just cut yourself some strips. The strips don't have to be too long. But what I'm doing is I want different colored leaves. And so I'm going to put them on the back of my jelly roll strips and cut out several of each color and just kind of fussy cut them. All right, so I'm going to heat up my iron. And now that I have a bunch of strips of Pellon 805, I'm going to go ahead and start kind of picking my fabric. Now, this fabric has been washed, but not starched. So I'm going to probably put a little bit of this because I want a leaf that's really orange. I'm going to fussy cut this. Just going to put this on there for about 15 seconds. Once it turns transparent, I'm going to heat up my iron. I probably want this kind of in the middle of a leaf so that it transitions to two colors. And so I'm going to lay that right over here. I do love this fabric. I think it works really well for this particular project. All right. Yeah, the camera has like an exposure level, and sometimes it's just too dark. If there's not enough light in the room, and then you can't really see. So I had to change the exposure. All right. So that's going to be a leaf. And I might take this dark green here and turn that into a leaf. I may take this orangey color that I have here. It's like a little leftover bit. And I may just put a little bit of this on there. So don't be afraid to literally just take your leftover bits and just use them for leaves. You could even make smaller leaves. They don't have to all be the same size because this is very artsy, this whole process that we're doing. And I'm not doing this on my wool mat, but I could because I really don't want to get glue on there, but it'll be fine. I'm going to put that on there. And we're going to start putting leaves on. And so these leaves can be cut however you want. You can cut them like this. I'm just going to take regular leaves for mine and just cut them all kind of leaf shaped. You don't even have to trace anything. Like that, just leaf shaped. And I'm going to use this to kind of see how I want to do my leaves. Some of the leaves can be small, some of the leaves can be big. I can even take a little piece like this and make smaller leaves to go at the base of the tree if I really wanted to. So don't be afraid to use even your little bitty bits for this. So this is where you get all those little wonky scraps that you save. So you could even put small leaves like this. If the leaves are too big, you can put them however you want. Maybe this leaf is looking a little bit big to me, so I'm just going to cut it in half. And how you do that is literally go like this. And I'm going to go from this side to the other like this. And then from this side to the opposite side like this. And I cut those leaves in half. So I'm liking these slightly smaller leaves. It's up to you how you want to do the leaves on your tree. You can do bigger, you can do smaller. It's fine. And this is what we use these pieces for. These are just fussy cut. So I'm going to take this leaf and I'm going to turn it into 2 leaves. And I'm going to make my leaves slightly smaller. Now you can do big giant leaves or you can do medium leaves or small leaves. It doesn't even matter. But just cut enough leaves so that you can put them on your tree. You can make them big and bushy. You can make them smaller. It's up to you. You can fill your entire tree really dense like this. And just cover the branches if you want, or you can just kind of put a few leaves here and there along your tree, which I think is what I'm going to end up doing. Because most of my leaves are falling. Even though the leaves haven't fallen here yet, I'm going to do that to my tree. And so I'm going to start kind of laying those out. On my tree. I'm going to go ahead and grab my scissors that I like because the scissors that I prefer have little teeth. I'm going to add a few dark leaves to that. Because I'm getting quite a bit of orange. So I'm going to kind of rotate these around. I'm going to put maybe an orange one over here. A brown one in between. And I'm just going to kind of decorate however many leaves I want. I need a little bit more green, so I'm going to use some of this green because I think it will look good. So don't be afraid to play around with this. This is the hardest part, is picking your fabrics and getting the colors that you want out of it. Here we go. This leaf looks pretty good in that color. There we go. So what do you guys think? You like this batik? These are those crazy fabrics that you're like, what am I going to do with this? Now, this would be great if you wanted to do the big leaves on your pillow. If you had a batik that was like this and you wanted to do the big leaves, you could just cut out several big leaves and put them on your pillow without going to the trouble of doing the tree. So if you wanted to do it that way, you could do that too. But I'm just going to use one of these pieces right here, one of these 10 by 10. layer cake pieces, and I'm going to fussy cut my leaves onto my tree. All right. Probably going to need at least 2 or 3 more green ones. Maybe a little bit of this brown. I'm just going to kind of fussy cut. Some people cringe when they have to cut fabric like this. I could have just put all over the entire piece, but I may not use the whole thing. And so I want to leave this for another day, for another applique possibly. So that one looks pretty cute right there. All right. So I think this is going to be looking the way I want it. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this one. So for this, I'm using a single layer cake piece. And I think I like how it looks. All right. So I think that's going to be enough. And I'm going to put my leaves all over my tree on some of the branches like this. Some of the bigger branches, some of the smaller branches. I like how this is looking. What do you guys think? And then once you have laid all of these out, the way you want them, I'm going to be kind of covering my branches like this. Like I said, some can be big, some can be small. And look at how quickly this project is going together. So if you want a fussy, trim yours, you can. And my tree is going to look like this. I thought about making like big bold leaves and making it more kind of modern looking, but I like how this is looking. This has a little too many browns in one spot. I'm just going to kind of bring this one here, and now I'm going to make a couple of small leaves to go inside these little branches. So these are going to be tiny little versions of my leaves. And then I'm going to go put those inside here. What do you guys think? I think I'm liking how this looks. I may grab a couple of small oranges. I don't have a yellow in there. I may do a yellow or two, some itty bitties. I'm thinking of doing this pumpkin. So let me grab this pumpkin. And I'm going to fussy cut some of these little pumpkin pieces because I like the color combination. So I'm just going to steal a little bit of fabric over here from this corner. I'm going to see what that looks like. Ooh, and I do like that because when I lay it on there, it's going to have like a little vine down the middle. And so by fussy cutting it like this, I get some interesting things going on in my leaves. Some little veining. All right, so I'm going to lay that there. Always let your fabric do extra things for you. Batiks are my fave for this kind of stuff because they hold their edges really well. They don't fray as much once you wash them, and they're great to sew through for these projects. All right, look at that piece right there. I like how that turned out. I'm going to kind of Put a few leaves here. Already had that there. Sorry, friends. Ragweed season is in full bloom around here. All right. I think I'm liking that. A couple more oranges. Oh, let me move my microphone. All right, there you go, friends. Sorry. All right, I've got a couple of things going on here. I like how this is looking. I may leave a couple of these branches kind of bare naked. And I may end up with some on the ground. So I'm going to take a little bit of this one layer cake that I have. It's been kind of mutilated. And there's nothing much left out of it. And I may take a little bit of this fire orange, a little bit of this brown and this green, and I'm going to probably make a few very small leaves to go down here on the bottom. I'm just going to take little bits. Maybe like 6 or so, and I'm just going to kind of fussy cut them out of what's left. Oh my, I'm going to have to definitely start taking allergy meds again. I don't like to, but I'm kind of forced to because I have ragweed allergies. Anybody else out there suffering from ragweed? All right. So this is looking pretty good, friends. I like how this is ending up. But don't be afraid to play with what you have. And if you have Inktense pens, this is a great time to take those Inktense and use them to color your leaves. So don't be afraid to color your leaves with your Inktense pens. All right. I'm going to lay that on there and just let it finish doing its job. And I think that this is looking pretty darn good. I like how it's turning out. Don't have any red, but I think I'm okay with it. And like I said, these are going to be smaller leaves that are going to go down here at the bottom. The base of the tree, they kind of fell to the ground. We're going to leave a couple of leaves, maybe, maybe not. That's the thing about this process. You can make them smaller, but you can't make them bigger. So if you make your leaves too small, then that's it. So I cut them out big and then I cut them down if I want to. All right. This is going to be baby leaves. There's a baby leaf right there. I'm going to sneak in. I'm going to sneak that bigger one in and that smaller one over here. There we go. And I'm liking how this is looking. And now I'm going to go lay this on my pillow because that's going to be the next thing. And I'm going to use a little bit of Inktense on my tree. So I have my tree. It's already been quilted down, the outline has, and I have all of the bits that I'm going to need. So I'm going to move this out of the way because I've kind of laid out the way I want the pieces. And then I'm going to carefully move this over. Hopefully I don't bump into it. I have done that before where I'm in the middle of a project and then all of a sudden I bump into my stuff and it all goes flying. I try not to cry, but it happens sometimes. All right, so I have my Inktense pencils. Those are archival inks. Once they dry, they are set. I also have Inktense blocks like this. So I'm going to use a combination of pencils and blocks, and I'm going to finish drawing on my tree. And this is why I call this sketchy applique, because you're kind of sketching it out. See, I have my tree. Now I can do some work. So I'm going to draw with my colors, and the color that I'm going to be using, this one is called Baked Earth, and Baked Earth is going to come down here, And I'm just going to kind of fill in the tree a little bit with baked earth. And you guys are going to see that here in a minute. Once I activate this with water, what that looks like. And so I'm going to add a little bit of baked earth. It's just going to look like watercolor effect is all that it's going to do to my tree. So if you're allergic to ragweed, the doctor said that this is the season to suffer. So hopefully you're not suffering from that. All right, do you see what I'm doing? I'm not really, here, I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to reduce the exposure so you can see better. I'm coming in and I'm just adding a layer of color, not a lot, to kind of the outside. And this is a color called baked earth, which is like a brownie red, like a sienna red. And then I'm just going in here like this. And I'm giving it like an outline. And so you can see now my tree has been outlined. I'm going to come in with a dark brown. And so the dark brown that I have is right here, and it is called bark, which is like a brownie black. And I'm going to kind of make in the middle like a hole in the tree. And then I'm also going to kind of come in and do some shading of the tree like this to just kind of give it some realism. And so it's going to come in like this and just give it some realism. And now that I have all of my Inktense pencils in there, I'm going to use a little bit of water and a brush. And I'm going to carefully give it a little bit of a color wash. And so you can use a paintbrush of any type. You can use a little skinny paintbrush. I just use regular water. This is nothing but good old-fashioned drinking water. I don't know how smart it is to use my smart water on crafting projects. I should be drinking that. And then I'm just going to take and I'm going to remove all of the excess water and just kind of touch it to the fabric to bring out the color. I can use this brush and just kind of brush it in. And that brings it out so that it activates the ink. And the ink kind of goes where I want it to go. And what I'm doing is I'm just creating a watercolor effect for my tree, if you notice. When this dries, it dries very lovely. I'm just adding water. Now the stitching, the reason I did the stitching before I did all of this is because the stitching kind of helps the ink to stay where I want it to stay, and it keeps it from migrating out into the other areas. So if you ever want to paint with Inktense, that is one suggestion, is that you paint your images in the same color as the background with your thread. And then when you come in and use your Inktense, it'll keep the ink kind of where you want it. So now that my tree is getting its tree-like shape and it's kind of wet, I'm going to come back and do a little wet on wet. So this was dry on wet, and now that I'm putting water, now I can do some wet on wet. And when I do wet on wet, it's a lot darker. You're going to see what I'm talking about here in a minute. I've painted all of this, parts of the tree, in bark and baked earth. And then I'm going to come in and add just a little bit more color. And I don't want to soak my piece. But if it is too wet, you can just iron it. Okay, so now I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to push in that liquid into the fabric. Now that I've got it pushed in, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a little bit more with this. And so this color is called bark. And so I'm just going to kind of come in. And while it's wet, I'm going to come in and do some texturing of my tree like this. If there's not enough water, I need to add a little bit more water down here, because it can dry really quickly on you. can see my tree now. I'm liking how that's looking. And I can come in with my big block and do a big swatch of color like this. See how it's picking up that water? And my tree is looking really good. If you've never played with water-soluble ink, this is your chance to kind of dive into these little projects like this. And I like how that tree is looking. Ah, there we go. So now that I have that, I'm going to let it dry. Or you can hit it with an iron. It's fine, either one. You hit it with an iron, it lightens it up just a little bit. And there's my kind of creepy little watercolory sketchy tree. Now, if you wanted to leave it like that, you could. I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to make sure that this is completely water activated. It shouldn't look dry at all. Like the ink should be kind of melded together. Shouldn't have any dry looking bits. And so I'm just going to go in here and it'll sink into the fibers. And then once it does, then you know you've done your job. Okay, so that tree's looking pretty good now. If you want more, you can add more. But there's my tree. All right. Nice and flat. Now I'm going to start adding my leaves. And so I use a needle for this. And I'm going to put those leaves all the way around the way I designed it on that paper. That's why you have the little tree, so you can decide. And I can put my leaves wherever I want. I can go like this. I can hang them down. And then once you do all of them, all the leaves you want, and you have them laying where you want, then you come back and you just press it all at one time. And this is going to look, I think, pretty good. I don't know, what do you guys think? If you like this process and you're ready to test it out, build your little quilty wings with some sketchy applique. Tell me how it goes. Share your pictures with me. I would love to see what you guys are doing. I think I'm definitely going to be doing the acorns using Inktense only and a little bit of black thread because I think I need a pillow with a pair of acorns. What about you guys? And acorns are perfect for pretty much any time of the year. I can use that in October. I can use those in November. I can leave that pillow out all the way up until December, really. So I'll get a few months of use out of a pillow. All right. These are kind of picky to get off. Sometimes the glue doesn't stick the way you want it to, and so you got to take a needle and kind of pick it off, but it works. There we go. Look at that. I think this is looking pretty good. I need to make sure that I'm leaving at least a 1/2 inch at the top and at least a 1/2 inch at the bottom, but I like how this is looking. I might even embroider or applique some words. I don't know, maybe a quote like, autumn is proof that change can be beautiful. I don't know, something interesting. What do you guys think I should applique on here? And so this is it, friends. I'm going to be sticking all of these on here, just like this, leaving my autumn tree. If you don't want too many leaves and you just want to leave a few leaves, you can. But I like how this is looking. my baby leaves, my medium leaves, my junior leaves. Here we go. Let me swap. Sometimes you just have to swap your leaves. And that's okay. And I like how this is looking very, very much. All right, let me put the rest of these, not very many. So really, you only need 1 or 2 little bitty scraps of fat quarters, or little bitty scraps of jelly roll strips, or itty bitty scraps of layer cakes, and this will work. I like how this is looking. What do you guys think? On a scale from 1 to 10, tell me what you think. Is this a 7, a 6, an 8? I think I'm going to give it a 9. I've designed better things, but this one is looking pretty cute, so I'm going to give it a 9, I think. And I've got a couple more leaves to add to my tree. And I think this is going to be it. Sometimes less is more. You know, if you get too fussy, sometimes you get over the top and it's overdone. Sometimes it's not enough. I'm going to take this last leaf. I'm going to put it in its little spot. Oh, you guys are very kind giving this a 10. All right, so if you are going to try this, go ahead and put it in the chat. Let me know that you're going to try it. And if you've done this process before of sketchy applique, let me know what you like. Okay, so now that I have this, and the last little baby leaf has been put in place, let me swap that orange like this. I think I like that better. It gives it more balance. Now that I have my leaves where I want them, some of these are too close to the edge, so I'm going to bring them back like this. And so I need to make sure that my tree isn't going off the edge, or I may replace it with a small leaf over here on this side and kind of turn it upward just to keep it from falling off into, you know, Lulu land. So I'm just going to grab a couple of small leaves like this. And I'm just going to kind of cover the branch like that. And then I may put a few leaves at the base of the tree, cut a few small ones and let them trail off. But this is where I'm doing it. So I'm close to the edge and I think this is going to be fine. And then now I'm going to press the entire thing down. Switch colors. And I think this is it. So I'm going to go ahead and take my tree. Like that. It'll cover up my lack of planning on this side. And then I'm just going to press the whole thing down. All right. So my iron is hot. And I'm just going to lay my iron right on top. I'm not going to move it. And there it goes. Now, a viewer asked me a question that I'm going to go ahead and answer, and they said, my last live stream, I did a fish. And see, these are all down now. And the fish that I did it without the pellon underneath. And so one of the things that I did is I just starched the fabric. And somebody said, doesn't that break down the applique? And the answer is no. Because over time, this gluey stuff breaks down, and so your appliques soften, whether you use that or not. All right, so now that I have this, the next thing that I'm going to do is I can take some brown variegated thread, which is what I'm going to use. So I have a brown variegated thread like this, or something like this, and I can go ahead and draw up the tree and go around the leaves. And so that is the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm literally going to replace my thread, and I'm just going to start here at the bottom and come up here, go around the leaf, come back down, go around the leaf, come back down, go around the leaf, come back down, go around the leaf, and then I'm going to end up with this brown variegated thread is making all the lines to the tree and going around all of the leaves. And I think that, friends, is all that I need to do. I don't think you need to watch me do the entire thing, but I'm going to start just like I did before. I'm going to come here just inside, and I'm going to have my lines inside here about 1/16 of an inch apart, and that's just going to densely quilt it. And then when I'm done, I'm going to free motion stipple around my tree all the way across to the end, unless I put a word here like hello fall or something. But this is my tree. I like how it looks. I hope you're going to try it. I'm going to stitch it down, and then that is it, friends. Easy as pie. You can do it too. Make sure that you are using needles that are Microtex because they have a bigger eye. So if you have a Microtex needle, this is perfect, or a top stitch or a jeans. So anything like that will have a big eye, and it'll prevent your thread from shredding. Okay, friends, that's it. It's 7 o'clock. It's time for us to get out of here. I've got to get ready for work tomorrow, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. This is going to be really, really nice. I like how this turned out. What do you guys think? I think it turned out okay. This is going to be a cute pillow. All right, friends, I will see you guys next time. Let me see what's on the calendar next. So if I look on my Google Calendar, it says that the very next thing that we're doing is no live stream next weekend because it's Labor Day weekend. But the weekend after that is my favorite things. And so that's what we're going to be doing. So friends, get out there and make yourself a really cute fall-inspired pillow. If you don't want to do this fussy stuff, you can do a big acorn. You can do whatever you want. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks for my favorite things at 6 o'clock. All right, everybody. You guys have a good one, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye.